I'm not selling insurance. My client already has insurance. It would be very rare for me to go to an employer of several hundred employees and find that they don't have anything. Almost all the time, it's coming in to replace an advisor who isn't necessarily on the watch the way that they should have been at one point in time. My dad described it back to me as you're kind of an assassin. You have to come in and get somebody else totally fired and yeah, Dad.
Corey Lilburn, I have known you for way too long. You are one of the few people I know that I can say I've known for 25 years.
Yeah, we're coming up on 30, buddy. We're getting old.
Insane. Every 5-year chunk, I feel like I'm old.
Yeah, we're just a number.
Yeah, I know. I like it. So I met you in Cutco.
Yeah.
So we both grew up in Cutco together. You were my first Cutco manager.
Yes.
You went on to become a partner in an insurance agency, which then rolled up to a behemoth insurance agency, which you are now employed by as a more pretty stooge. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Sales is a super competitive trait, super competitive skill to learn. Moving from tangible to intangible is definitely a topic I want to cover because sales as a profession, I think has a lot of facets. But I want to start with kind of the building blocks for becoming a professional, which are what skills did you learn in Cutco that became transferable in insurance sales?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think I'm glad you brought that up. Should we talk about the fact that the first training class you had a hoodie on? Do you remember that? You sat in the front row with a hoodie on it. I do remember. I think you were an 18-year-old kid at that point in time. So
Sure.
I was probably hot. It was a fair shot and call me a stooge. Yeah, but I think there are critical elements that we learned there and that you took to the next level more so than most people, which is why you had such great success as an individual there. We talked about things like attitude being a big deal, right? And when you're 18, it's easy to get distracted with all the other things in your life. But having that attitude and that work ethic and that drive to get up and create your own schedule. We had to create our own opportunities, whether it was you or I as an individual salesperson, or once we became management. And that wasn't a path for you. And interesting, in my own career, that was the path I pursued there. And now I've taken a step back from that role of management. I like the idea of individual success, individual drive, being able to say, hey, I'm going to create what I need to create for my clients as opposed to what I have to try to instill upon a group of other people, right?
Yeah. So basic building blocks of professional life.
Professional life had to happen. Yeah. How do you schedule your day? How do you make sure you're waking up and you're getting all the things done that need to get done in a given day amidst all the other distractions that are always out there?
Yeah. Interestingly, I have our sort of executive and management staff at Easy Pay Direct. Routinely, somebody on the team will do something and they will get irritated by it. And I'll say, have you explicitly told them how to perform that thing? Yeah. That task. Yeah. And they're like, no, they should just know how to do it.
Just, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but a lot of people didn't build that skill.
Right.
And even things as simple as showing up on time, they haven't been programmed to do it. So back out and make sure they understand and give them advice to do it.
Right.
Now, once they know how to do it, if they don't do it, we have a different problem. But some of those I definitely learned through basic blocking and tackling, as my ops guy says, through Cutco.
Love it. Yeah, there's a point you don't want to be a professional babysitter. Yeah, right? You just assume that somebody should have learned that. And I think getting our nose bloody, right? Hearing no in the sales culture that we had there prepared me to go out of the dating world.
Oh yeah,
and get my nose bloody to the dating world, eventually finding that partner in life. But I think there's the attitude that is instilled upon us that you have to just keep trying, just keep going. You're going to ask for the order, you're going to ask for the referral, and if you don't get it, that's okay, right? Then the longer we go in our careers now, the more I can appreciate and value a quick no over a long drawn out no.
Oh,
right? Is that not the worst?
Oh yeah,
right. You're kicking the can down the road, and somebody can't just tell you to your face, I don't want to do business with you. I'd much rather hear that than, yeah, can you give me another month? Can you give me a couple more months? And those are things I think that we grew to really appreciate value in those Cutco training piece.
Yeah, I'm going to hit on that later because I think that how you approach the ask is super relevant to a lot of people and they do a terrible job with it.
Sure.
How do you see AI impacting insurance over the next 5 years?
So we sold our agency to Acrisure back in 2015. And Acrisure was $400 or $500 million agency at the time. they grew over the next several years. And 2019 was a couple $1 billion agency, and they made a purchase at that time that was $400 or $500 million. And it was an AI firm, Cutco. And that was a really big deal before AI was cool, before AI was something to talk about. And so it's been a heavy investment of our organization. How we use it, I think, is an ongoing study. And we're going to continue to figure out how we can use it in our personal lives, how we can use it in our professional lives. I'm by far not even close to being an expert at figuring out how I can really use AI to the greatest potential. I think we're constantly learning. So I've got subscriptions on several different right now, trying to pull them in to help start a product, help analyze a process or a law that comes out, right? If I can get some quick notes version really quick to be first out there with my clients and helping them understand what's going on. So I think I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on AI.
Yeah, I do too. I think that there is the application of AI in the day-to-day role that you have as a salesperson. And then there's the application of AI in the insurance ecosystem.
Sure.
In how you assess risk, for example. Has any of that come to fruition at this point in your perception? Actuary tables.
I don't know that I'm seeing that different than I was pre-AI. I think that we're still learning how that's going to be an impactful tool right now. I think that the way that we've been doing risk assessment is still continuing with or without AI.
Yeah. I'm super curious. I mean, insurance is equally boring to payments, and all the tenets are the same.
Yeah.
It's risk assessment, and nobody thinks about payments in terms of risk assessment, which I'm not going to go on a rant about that now. But
you can if you want.
I talk about it so fucking much. It's here to say, but it is the same. You're assessing risk, sure, and so I think it will prove to be incredibly helpful in the future when we get there.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like either. So I'm always curious to see people's take on, how that's going to improve the industry.
I also think that there's a challenge with how the big carriers are assessing risk versus how we can do it on our own, right? And so one of the things that that I've changed in my career, and this is probably post ACA, right? So the ACA is almost becoming old law.
What's ACA?
ACA was the Affordable Care Act. So the ACA, people call it Obamacare, 2010, right? This thing was signed into law. And what I told new people to the business that year was this is the great game changer, right? Take the experience that I had for the decade prior to that and throw that out the door. So that meant take the experience that all of the old guard brokers had for 20 and 30 and 40 years prior to that, throw out the door. That was the great game changer. And one of the things that we saw, we talked about risk assessment, the ability to look at clients, is moving a lot from fully insured to the self-funded marketplace, right? And to being that self-funded client, and you're going to create yourself as the insurance carrying for the first X dollars in coverage. And we're still going to be able to reinsure those really awful things. There's still going to be an incidence of cancer. There's going to be end-stage renal. Premiums are born, et cetera, et cetera. So we still have to buy reinsurance. But for that average 100 life employer, 150 life employer that had been counting on Blue Cross or United or Aetna to manage that risk for them, we said, let's take some control back. And so saw a massive shift, not just in my booking business, but in lots of books of business out there. Brokers worked their salt figuring out how to do that underwriting, how to move people into the right stop loss mechanism.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that specifically. I want to get to, what small businesses can do to not get bludgeoned by large insurance carriers later, because I don't want to lose people in the weeds of insurance yet.
There, good.
But actually, any entrepreneur that starting out or otherwise, I think it's much more relevant as you get going. You build a team and things get bigger and bigger, and you build some space to be able to focus on the other elements of building a company. I think when you're getting going, you really need to focus on just driving sales, getting the business up and running. Right. And then you can worry about the nuances. But insurance benefits and the culture of your company is what the company is.
Sure.
It's what builds things. So as you want to talk about it, before we get there, I want to go back to sales because I could talk about it endlessly. My perception with insurance is that it's an incredibly relationship-based sales, specifically the type that you're doing. What is the sales cycle like for you? Give me the target client, the sales cycle, et cetera, because it's different than sitting at a kitchen counter and selling somebody nuts.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's changed over my career too. You made a good point where in the beginning, you're willing to take on anything. So we were willing to sell that one trimmer at one point in time. Well, obviously, we wanted, what was it called? The homemaker. We wanted the homemaker sale. We were willing to get that one trimmer.
Yeah.
When I started my career, it was any 10 or 15 or 20 life company, but the rules are different, state by state. And so you kind of start to build your target where you're going there. It's not a kitchen table sale. You're going after a business, and within that business, you're going after a decision maker within that business. So, you think of your client as ABC company, but really your client is Bob or Sal or the person that's making that decision, because they're your ultimate point of contact. They're the person you're going to be having that relationship with. And so it is a relationship driven sale, and it takes time to cultivate. I think the smaller the business, the shorter that sales cycle is going to be, the larger the business, unless you're there at a particular point in time where that pain is really serious, right? Where they say, my current guy has been doing a terrible job at X, Y, and Z. You just happen to be at the door at that time or referred in at that time. So I think that has changed over the career as well. The focus that you're going to go after today, that focus is a company is typically privately held. There's several hundred to a couple thousand employees. That's who I'm sitting down with. Typically it's a CFO, a CEO, maybe an HR director, and uncovering what that pain point's going to look like.
And that's a lot of employees. Where do they fall in terms of revenue? I mean, that's not a market you track. It's always interesting talking to different, radically different verticals.
Sure.
Yeah. Because they measure differently, right? Yeah. I measure heads.
Right.
What's the range of revenue for 100 to 1,000?
Well, and you think of you think of the reason it's not tracked, because your revenue per employee could be off the charts. Right? I've got a client that has 400 employees, that they're $1 billion organization. That's huge revenue per employee. And then there's some of that size that are maybe nonprofits, and maybe they're worth a couple $100 million. So I think the span there is huge. For me to boil it down to make it easy for my referral partners, I have to boil it down to a head count and to say, have you run some risk there, right? In the world of insurance, you run risk of participation percentages, right? Where maybe I've got a group of a couple hundred employees, but because of culture or demographic that they're hiring, maybe the participation rate is really low. And so that can be disastrous. We'll try and put together a plan that assesses risk based on the law of large numbers.
One of the things, and I want to focus on the mechanics of it, because I think that for all businesses, looking at other models can be incredibly helpful to figure out what levers to trigger in your own business.
Yeah.
Your sales cycle insurance is so different, and sales process is so different than other industries because of the regulation, because of the renewal process. And then you go into functionally more of an enterprise type sale where you have maybe multiple decision makers.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of walk through that, but start with the lead gen and sales process. So when you have multiple decision makers, how do you open the door with the right decision maker in the first place?
So it's a great question. So my dad, who's an educator, I was trying to help him understand what I do. And I had that problem all the time with my family. I just, right. Or you use the words like broker or consultant, insurance you've mentioned. And when you try to explain what I do, I'm not selling insurance. My client already has insurance. My job is to try to remove the advisor of that client's insurance package. Right. And so my dad described it back to me as, you're kind of an assassin, and you have to come in and get somebody else totally fired. And that's a pretty basic way of, Dad, that's that. If you were describing your friends, that's an assassin. That's awesome. So really the job isn't to sell this client insurance. It would be very rare for me to go to an employer of several hundred employees and find that they don't have anything. First of all, they're skirting the law today somehow, right? And then an applicable large employer says you have to now offer something. And so majority of the time, almost all of the time, it's coming in to replace an advisor who isn't necessarily on the watch the way that they should have been at one point in time. So that sales cycle, like I said, it can be very short if you're there at the right time, but more likely you have a committee of buyers. You have HR, you have finance, you have the executive. And so making sure you can line all of those up, and then who got me in there, who referred that, right? So I think spending, like you said, a lot of this is in your business too. It's relationship driven. Who helped you open that door to this person? How strong was that relationship? Is this something that's going to be a shorter cycle, or is that relationship, more surface deep, and it's going to take me a lot more time to build that on my own?
is it all relationship driven, or are you doing cold outreach as well?
I don't do cold outreach anymore. That's not to say that I did back in the day when we were grinding. You're doing everything, right? So you're going through lists and lists and lists. Today, it's all referral driven. But it's interesting too. In the very beginning of my career, HSAs were brand new. And then healthcare reform happened in 2010. And so there were certain metrics that said, wait a minute, maybe my golfing buddy or my fishing pal isn't the best broker for me anymore. But maybe they're not keeping up on some of the latest and greatest changes. COVID was a game changer for everyone, right? So the pandemic changed a lot of the laws and how we do. And so that enables you to throw some additional spears at that relationship that's already existing. That the country club buddy may not be the best broker for you, right? And so you start to make a business decision as opposed to a personal decision. And that's where, the goal is having that great relationship, but also locking up so that the client understands that the advice that they're getting from me, even though we're now friends, even though we now might go golf, even though we might do whatever, the advice they're getting from me and from my team is more impactful than they would get from somebody else. And so we spend a lot of time talking about what's the resources that they get when they buy me.
Interesting. I like the frame of not selling insurance because you're selling yourself. I also think that selling yourself is a dangerous proposition and puts you in a position where you have to be on all the time.
Sure.
So you're selling yourself in, obviously, the services of the firm. I want to go back to like the actual solicitation and driving to the right relationship, because cold outreach is one thing. Even if you have a referral, it might not be to the right person in the company. Right. So you have an in to Bob, who is a VP of sales in the company.
Right.
How do you bridge the gap, and what's the introduction and what's the initial conversation? Because in a lot of our clients' worlds and a lot of entrepreneurs I know, there's a deliberate sales cycle.
Yeah.
And there's a direct marketing element of it where it's like, hey, here is the value proposition and here is the pitch. Here's the call to action.
Yeah.
With a long cycle sale, how do you translate into that? And how do you ultimately get to the ask and the yes?
I think it's digging. I think it's mining. I think it's working through what's the value of the person that I was referred to, right? Performing Arts Center was referred into the director of food and bev. The director of food and bev is not a decision maker in the world of who's going to buy the employee benefit package. But as I talked to this dude, I found out that the HR director was a big fan of Frank Sinatra. We had to submit, cool thing to know. We had to submit RFPs that were all the same. They were getting RFPs from a dozen of my competitors, and it was in a box, and you couldn't tamper. I mean, it was very rule driven how we all had to submit our response for them. Everybody's going to look exactly the same in that scenario. This broker has 27 different value-added services. We have 24 different. They have 28. I mean, they're measuring things that really are going to look a lot alike. And so in talking to food and bev, I find this little nugget of information. I'm sitting around my team and we're talking about how do we look different here. And one of the guys on the team says, singing telegram. Well, that works great if you're going after the Performing Arts Center in town. So hired a guy, did a deal in a parking lot, handed him my RFPs, looked at him with his tilted Frank Sinatra hat, the disheveled tie, and said, put your little bitty together. And he literally sang a song about my agency as he presented it to the director of HR. I got a call later that day, and she said, I can't give you the business for that, but you're now a finalist, because that was totally different. And so I say that because whoever you're getting referred into is somebody that could potentially be an influencer. And so director of food and bev became my mole, my person that when I knew this is what we were going to do and how this was going to happen, called the guy back up and I said, look, I need you to gather a whole bunch of people. Frank Sinatra is going to show up at X time. I need a few people in the lobby when this thing is delivered to make it look like an actual little show. And so that cycle shortened because of that. So who that you're referred into can be that person that's going to get you into the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I love that. Our great longtime friend of mine, John Rulin, passed last year, had a general philosophy that you needed to take care of the most important people in your prospect's life.
Excellent.
Meaning the spouse, right? Or the kids.
Sure.
And so when he was working on a relationship that he wanted to drive deeper for whatever reason, as a client or as a referral partner or an unknown reason, he would always make sure that he gifted the wife. Sure. Took care of the wife. Or husband.
Sure.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, giftology was such a simple concept that John made a massive change in a lot of people's worlds, right? How we choose to give things. You think about the pandemic when life was shut down, depending on what state you lived in. We live in a free state of Florida, so we weren't shut down as long as a lot of people, but life was shut down how we know it. And you're such a great networker. I'll brag on you for a minute. You sent out that May for Cinco de Mayo a split of Clase Azul, and you sent it to a handful of friends, none of whom knew each other. The only connection was you. And we did a happy hour together for Cinco de Mayo. And that was in my mind, a ruling giftology that sort of sticks with you, that says this is something that's a totally different concept. And there we were on Zoom at a happy hour time frame, having our Clase Azul together. And really the purpose was for you to introduce like-minded friends to one another and have a conversation, see what comes. And I thought that was amazing. But that's that concept that is so simple in nature, just taking care of those around you, and then business can forward, relationships can forward. So great reference to John.
Yeah, it was super fun too.
Yeah, it was super fun. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and that's not my go-to drink. Oh, how do you have a good time, man?
What was super funny about that particular time is Cameron Harold was on Azure, and I had sent out half fifths.
Yes.
Yeah, 375 milliliters. Because why would you need a whole fifth at a happy hour?
Thank you.
But in Canada, I couldn't get them to deliver half fifths, so Cameron got a full fifth.
Aha, right.
And he was unaware that he was the only one with the full fifth. So when people were like, "Oh, mine's empty," he was like, "Oh, I better have some more."
He felt behind me. I do remember having a lot of fun on that show. That was great.
That was awesome. Well, I think that this addresses some of it, which is stand out, do something different to get attention.
Yeah.
To get your foot in the door. Outside of theatricals, how do you make insurance less boring so people want to engage on it?
Buddy, that is not possible. I mean, that's a really difficult task. You made payments less boring by creating a podcast. That's a great idea. Maybe I'll try to do that. I don't know how to make insurance less boring. I think that I have leaned into the fact that I'm a nerd, and I have studied insurance to be nerdy about it enough to where clients go, hey, this nerd actually knows what he's doing. He's assembled a team around him that is providing a value-added service that we need. So it's tough to make it less boring. I'm not a good golfer. I mean, it's
you're a good drinker.
I actually, I can't do that. And so I try to make that a little bit more fun. I think the more often that we can break bread with prospects and clients, that we can have a drink with a prospect or a client, I think the more that those relationships are going to form. And so the less that I have to talk about insurance, the more I can talk about just who I am as a person, who my team is, and what we're going to bring to the table different than they're getting today. Insurance is going to happen. It's a necessary evil. We're going to have to continue buying it. I just have to try to make that process a little bit easier.
I want to talk about the sales element related to renewals. So there's a comparison here to renewals are very strange, that the cycle of insurance, like only being able to do it once a year and the transition and the regulations around it. I want to talk about I want you to explain what the parameters are there.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about how you sell that and how you make sure you get the renewal the next year and how you engage the group also. And I want to do that not because I care about insurance, but because a lot of people have clients and client relationships that are recurring by nature and pay them over time, and they pay them more and more and more if you keep them.
Yeah.
But they don't have a good mechanism to keep them engaged over time.
Right.
So how do renewals work structurally?
Yeah.
And how do you think about reselling the renewal?
I don't put it in that frame at all. I think that the renewal needs to be made a non-event. I think if the renewal is an event, then it becomes a linear process where I have a client, I have a renewal, I have an open enrollment, check the box, I'm done. Right? I sell against that concept all the time. This is a never-ending cycle. I'm learning about your business as we go through and we have the conversation. We're getting half a year in, we're having claims conversation all the way along so that you understand how are we managing what's going on in your world, right? And the best claim is no claim at all. So how are we helping to manage and mitigate those claims? But as we get closer, we're now having pre-renewal conversations, right? So we can hone in and pivot away from some of the other aspects of just insurance, but how's your business going? What's the latest? Are you looking to acquire this year? Are you looking to sell this year? Is it going to be a massive change in labor one way or the other? Now, as we get closer to renewal, it's a non-event. It's just part of the process. If you focus on selling the renewal, then you're considering losing that client. At no point in that cycle am I losing that client. Constantly developing this relationship and constantly developing the need for, hey, we're coming up on a renewal, but it's not a surprise to my clients because we're having these conversations all the way along. They know this is a crappy claims year. I mean, 1 year out of 5 for the average self-funded client is going to be a crappy year. It's going to be a blow-up year where the claims are going to be bad. That's just the historical average. The 2 years out of 10 are going to stink. How are we managing through that cycle, right? What are we doing to make that happen? This is an impactful year. I mean, the beginning of the summer, the experts were predicting that we'd see an 8 to 8.5% trend increase next year. Trend is simply medical inflation, right? So you think of current inflation, market inflation dynamics. Medical trend has typically hovered somewhere around 3 times normal inflation, which is crazy to understand.
It is crazy.
The cost of healthcare is rising. Cost of healthcare is expensive. Prescription drugs are expensive. So we can argue who's at fault there. There can be a lot of figure pointing that goes on. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, healthcare is expensive, right? And so at the beginning of the summer, trend was looking like 8 to 8.5%. Just here in the last couple weeks, trend has now been predicted to go to 10%. So you think about that increase in just a short span of time to go from 8% to 10%. That's a massive change in 2 months, predicting what's going to happen for next year. And so if that holds true, that'll be the biggest impact on claims that we've seen in probably 30 to 40 years. I mean, it's a really big impact on what we're going to see next year because of the cost explosion of healthcare in general. So when you talk about renewal, it's preparing clients to understand this is what we have to budget for next year. The train's left the station. Right? We now have to prepare. What are we doing to help mitigate those costs?
Yeah, I mean, what I really heard that's applicable, I think, to all other industries is you have to keep the conversation and the relationship going so that you have a assumptive close for the next transaction,
sure,
which a renewal is,
sure,
but a lot of that's framing,
right,
and a lot of it's relationship management, and you have to figure out the touch points where you can interact with people so that it seems natural for the next purchase.
Yeah, are you giving an opportunity to say no, I don't want to do business with you anymore? I mean, I consider myself to be a trusted advisor, to be ideally the lifespan of this business. Right, I want to be there as the advisor for their employee benefit package. That means I don't want to make a big deal of I need you to sign paperwork at a renewal. That's a non-event, right? That's just part of the normal process. This is a constant evolution of how's your business going? Where does my business fit into that? And let's figure out the rest.
Yeah, man, I think that's a really big deal. I mean, the assumptive close is very effective in a lot of different areas of sales. And you have to be aware of the dynamics of the relationship, the entry point of the relationship, the current status of it for it to be effective.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes honestly, even with like cold traffic, and this could apply in personal life and dating,
sure,
or it could apply in a business sale where you just completely assume the close and you're just like, oh yeah, so let's do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just sign here. And sometimes that's enough.
Sure.
Right.
And
sometimes it's like a full stop and it fucks up the whole sales plot.
Yeah.
Right. Whoa.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. Yeah. I wanted to hit on that. You clearly are a geek about insurance. So let's start asking.
There's a big difference there.
Is there? What's the between? You can a nerd. You could. I don't know. But you mentioned in your insurance nerddom.
Yeah.
There you mentioned. Healthcare costs are rising, healthcare is expensive, pharmaceuticals are expensive. And one could argue that pharmaceuticals are not expensive,
okay,
and that people make them expensive because of a broken system.
Yeah.
So Mark Cuban started Cost Plus Drugs, right, to highlight how ridiculous the pharmaceutical industry is and how not expensive some of these things are to manufacture.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is R&D, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. But you have a structure that forces people to pay more than they might need to.
Right.
So where do PBMs fit into self-insuring and traditional insurance, and how do you think about that?
You're begging me to go down the mechanics of insurance right now.
Only a little bit.
Okay, just for that. Yeah.
So enough that it can be helpful for at small businesses, right? So small and mid-sized businesses had different challenges than enterprise businesses. So I'd say sub 100 humans working in your company have a different dynamic. But I think that understanding the basics is relevant to them and knowing what's available to them versus the masses.
So start with let me back up. Mark actually came and spoke to our industry association earlier this summer. It was awesome. In his introduction, he literally said, I'm here to F up the insurance industry. And that was great, right? To shake things up. And his business is fantastic. The PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. So you think about how we access our drugs. When you go to fill your prescriptions at a Walgreens or a CVS or wherever you're buying your drugs, there's the drug maker, there's the retail store, and in the center...
My guy Joe doesn't have any of those.
Your guy Joe is a different situation. In the center is that PBM, right? And so all of the drugs when they end up at retail are coming through our PBM. And 3 of them generate 80% of the drugs in our country. 3 PBMs. They are Express Scripts and CVS Caremark. Okay? Those 3, and I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but those 3 are either owned by or own an insurance carrier. All 3 of them. Talk about an incestuous relationship that's happening there, right? So when you talk about cost rising, there's an inherent problem in that scenario. So Mark is out of that 20% that are independent PBMs. There are a lot of them, by the way. It's not just him. He's obviously done a great job. He's got a great brand. But there's lots of independent PBMs that we look to say, how can we try to keep those costs down? There's also the ability to buy drugs outside of the U.S., right? At one time, it was looked at, is this even legal? It is legal. And there are companies that have been creating to do exactly that we go and source drugs from New Zealand, from Australia, from Canada, from Great Britain. There's 7 different drugs that are tier 1 countries that have the same standards as our FDA. 7 different countries that have the same standards as our FDA. 4 of them, English is their primary language. And so those are the 4 that we typically source from, where you're getting the same standard as the FDA and they're speaking English. So clients will get a 90-day supply from overseas at 50 to 70% less than what they buy here onshore. To Mark's point, that's a dramatic problem.
Yeah.
Take a step back. That's your brand name drugs, right? 90% of what we fill in this country, 90 are generics. And those generics should be under $10 a month. And in most cases they are. But there's lots of pharmacies that give stuff away for free. We design our health plans to where generic drugs, maintenance medications, your blood pressure medicine, your cholesterol medicine, things that you're going to take to the end of time. We designed the plan where those drugs should be free to the member. And in most cases, the employer agrees. That's going to move the needle 0.5 percentage point, maybe, on the overall cost of their plan, but it will keep their employees compliant on whatever it is that they're treating, right? So a little problem doesn't become a big problem because somebody forgot to go and fill their drug or didn't have the $5 or whatever it is. Make those drugs free, make them automated, and that makes a game changer of a difference. Mark has created something that is going to be very impactful over time. I do agree with that.
Helpful context in terms of insurance paying for some drugs or not other drugs. When you are an employer of X amount of people and you have employees that have a prescription benefit plan, sometimes you're not able to, am I right, in that sometimes you're not able to get the generic version and your coverage is for the name brand.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Each carrier has a PDO, a prescription drug list, essentially, that says for cholesterol, we're going to cover these drugs. And typically there's an overlap from one carrier or one PDO to another that's pretty strong, more than 90%. But certainly there's disruption that happens. When we have our clients that are moving from carrier A to carrier B, you prepare for a network disruption, you prepare for a pharmacy disruption or some level. Typically 5% or so that we know is going to be, hey, I was getting this drug covered and now it's not on my formulary anymore. And that's annoying and frustrating. Obviously, if they try to mitigate what that's going to look like.
How much does the PDL impact the cost of insurance in general?
Oof. It's a good question. So when you talk about pharmaceuticals in general, when I got into the business, and this is 25 years now that I've been doing this, I think pharmaceuticals, we can fact check me on this, but probably represented 10% of your overall premium. If premium's 100%, prescription drugs are probably in the ballpark of 10%. Today, I have clients where 50% of their spend is their drugs. And that's a challenge. right? The average is still probably in the high 20s, but it is not uncommon to see a third of the spend be on prescription drugs. And so managing that is a really big deal, which again is why we have these solutions that Mark talks about. It's why we talk about buying drugs overseas. It's why we talk about what can we do to try to lower the cost there. GLP-1s are the talking point today, right? And so you have that category of people that are taking them for weight loss. And I think that category has exploded. Well, there's guardrails around that on a prescription drug plan, on a medical plan. And I think there should be guardrails around that. Lifestyle choices are probably the first thing that we should look at before we start to tap into the Wegovy's of the world, right? But you do have that category where folks that have an A1C score, diabetics that are taking Ozempic, that are taking Mounjaro, those are life-saving drugs for people. And so the cost in that category to me is worth it and can be borne by the plan. It's the rest that we're looking for the quick fix that probably is not something that should be paid for by insurance.
So if average cost if average ratio used to be 10% was prescription, and it's inflated to 25 to 50 depending on the plan, even on the low end, there's tremendous inflation there. Are more people sick and using drugs, or did the cost of drugs just go up that much?
That's a great question. I would argue to that. I think the cost of drugs has just gone up that much. And again, you get into the great finger pointing that happens in our industry where R&D, if Gramamine's a drug to help keep her alive for 10 more years, do we want to buy that drug for granted? Most of us would answer yes. I want more time with that person. But the R&D to bring that drug to market, as it's always been argued to us, that says this is what costs so much for the big drug makers, right? Pfizer's and Merck's of the world. Mark Cuban and those in the space are trying to do effectively is shine a spotlight on that and say, let's just make sure that that's actually true. It is the cost of R&D so much that we have to inflate the cost of that drug when it comes to market.
Yeah,
that much more. One of my clients is on a dependent on a bile acid synthesizer. Kid can't make bile. And it's a $750,000 drug every year. And that's, I think, the most expensive that's out there. Those would be a couple $1 million drugs today that are on market, which is insane. But it's also, if you are that parent and you know there's a life-saving drug out there, do you not want that drug for your kid, right? So it becomes a really impactful question for us to answer. And then who pays for it?
You've got a very interesting, challenging situation in a capitalistic society. And there's a question of when government intervention makes sense,
right,
and when it doesn't, and when tax dollars should be put to work,
right,
and when they shouldn't. But I would argue that the larger problem across the board is the perversion of those incentives with the different parties involved.
Sure.
And it's frustrating to see that, where you see regulations passed, things put in place, insurance companies owning PBMs or vice versa.
Right.
Those are things that are not good,
right,
for anybody,
right,
except those parties.
There's a lot of dollars at stake, a lot of days. I think that a lot of people would argue that middlemen, like me, at the end of the day, I am a middleman, right? Yeah. So I have a client who needs to buy insurance. And because of the failures of the world of insurance, there needs to be somebody in the middle to help keep this segment honest, right? To say, I want to compare X insurance company against another one. The problem is with a lot of brokers out there, the explosion of rates and a commission rate tied to that has led to brokers getting fat and happy, frankly. And so the broker's worth their salt. And you can argue, is it called a broker or a consultant? Whatever the case may be, there's a fine line there. But the broker's worth their salt will come in and change a commission percentage to a flat fee to say, regardless of how bad your claims get, and year over year renewals that are happening, I still am paid what I'm worth, which is this fee, not something subject to how sick your people got, thus how big your renewal got. And I think that's been a good selling point for those of us who feel like we're bringing a good service to the table that doesn't have to be contingent upon how sick that client is when I inherit them.
Yeah, I think it's very, very, very important across the board to look at incentives.
Sure.
And if there's a age-old narrative of follow the money.
Yeah.
And I think Charlie Munger has a good quote about, if you want to understand somebody's performance or what the performance will be, look at the incentives.
Yeah, that's not
or something that's much more interesting. And
he's pretty smart.
I will set the net. But something.
I'm impressed you're quoting Hunger. That's impressive. He's actually older than us, by the way. Yeah, he's as old as we may feel right now. He's got to speak.
And Sterling, he died, didn't he? Yeah, died recently.
Did he just die?
I think he died, within the years.
I didn't know. The timing of the release of this show here, maybe we back up the one.
We'll cut that part. Pretend we knew. Pretend we knew. Like responsible capitalists. So, yeah, I think, look, the most relevant point for small business owners relative to insurance is how do you play the system the right way, right? How do you not get screwed? How do you provide good coverage? How do you do it at a lower cost than normal?
Yeah.
And so, you have built a career around understanding self-insurance and understanding how to utilize that the best way possible. Give us the basics, and at what size does it make sense? Because there are a lot of people listening that are small, right? That have a few employees to call it 50 employees.
Yeah.
When can you put self-insurance in place? How do you supplement it when you do it? And when is it not worth it?
That's a great question. I think that the root is a business owner didn't go into business to offer health insurance to his employees, right? When you have an idea for a widget or a service and you go into business, you need to start staffing up. The first thing you're thinking about is not how can I go and buy insurance and what does insurance look like? And so I think the answer to your question is having a relationship with a consultant who actually knows how to advise you, knows how that business could fit into the right model. I have friends that start out in business and my first response is get a PEO, right? Go get a one-stop shop where you've got somebody that's going to handle your insurance, your workers' comp, your payroll, all of it, because it's a distraction for you. Are you going to pay a much, much higher fixed cost to that? Yes. So you don't want to have that long term, but in the short term, maybe that could be your fix. There are clients that when they get to 20 or 30 or 40 employees, start to consider self-funding. And self-funding there's a subset of self-funding called level funding, where the carrier is really offering a self-funded chassis to you, but again, charging a higher fixed rate so that you can share in some potential surplus at the end of the year. You got to have the right consultant who understands your business to know if that's the right avenue for you to go down, right? Or do we wait a little bit longer in the fully insured space and then go all in on self-funding, not dealing with this level funded subset so we can enjoy the risk and reward?
Well, let me get the basics of self-funding. So my basic understanding is of a 12-year-old probably.
That's fine.
But the basics of insurance period are that premiums are collected and you're assessing risk to basically say it's unlikely that these things are going to happen. We're going to collect enough premiums so that if they happen, we can pay for it.
Yeah.
And over time, we'll have a pool of money that will allow us to cover the potential risks. The other side of insurance is that in order to maximize that equation, they're negotiating better rates for certain things. And that's pharmaceuticals and medical services.
Sure.
Right? So a doctor might charge $500 for a given service.
Okay.
But an insurance company might only pay him $300 or her $300.
Okay.
Right? Are you all true so far?
Yeah, negotiate a rate. Sure.
So in the world of self-funding, the second element doesn't exist, or it doesn't. So if you self-fund an insurance plan and you're saying, hey, I'm going to aggregate this pool of money to cover the cost of insurance in the back end, how do those two things get reconciled and how does that work?
So let's simplify it in terms of buckets. If you're in a fully insured plan, all of the components of your plan are bundled into one. The insurance carrier is trying to make it easier for you as the business owner to say, we're going to cover your pharmaceutical plan. We're going to cover all the admin. You're going to pay one premium that's based on the eligibility of your population, right? So everybody's selecting plan A or B. You're paying a premium based on that. If we're going to go self-funded, we have to deconstruct what that premium looks like. And we put it into three buckets. Bucket A is just the administrative cost of running a plan. You don't want HR to be looking at every claim that comes in, right? So instead, we hire a third-party administrator. And there are lots of third-party administrators, some of which you've heard of that are owned by United, UMR, Aetna, Meritain, CBS Aetna. The list goes on. And then you have lots of independent third-party administrators. that's the smallest bucket of fixed cost that's based on how many people do you have, right? And so they're administering the plan, the claims, the network, et cetera. Bucket B, now I have to solve for, what about my worst case scenario? So bucket B is my reinsurance, right? Bucket B says, I need to have the deductible, which the size of that deductible is generally dictated by the size of your organization. How many belly buttons are there? And so, yeah, it's the great term we use in the world, belly buttons. I don't know why that started. So in bucket B, I'm paying a premium to a reinsurance carrier, right? And
this is basically catastrophic.
This is catastrophic for the worst things that happen for a person, but also in the aggregate. What if the underwriters are wrong? Well, if they're wrong to the tune of X percentage above my expected claims count, I also want protection that, what if we had a bunch of mid-level claims and we just exploded through our aggregate attachment point? Meaning, I had some big hits per person, but I also had a lot of medium-sized hits over across the entire company. So you're protecting yourself on two levels then.
Let me run that back. So I said catastrophic, meaning something like cancer,
Sure.
A massive car accident,
Sure.
$50, $100 million claims,
Yeah.
$50,000, $100,000 million claims.
Okay.
And then you said middle. And so the alternative is, let's say you have one employee that gets cancer,
Yeah.
or you have all 30 employees and all of them have a $5,000 claim.
Take your example. If 50,000 is my deductible, which says I had a catastrophic cancer. By the way, that's
50,000 is
$1 million. Okay.
is your deductible for catastrophic if you're self-insuring.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
We could use that number.
Okay.
Yeah. 50,000 would be a smaller client. So a client that has maybe less than 100 employees, right? Whereas a client that has a few thousand employees might have a $500,000 deductible.
Yeah. So I want to articulate this further, because most people that have traditional insurance, they don't have a deductible as a company. So they're not even thinking about it as like the company deductible, right?
Built in, it's aggregated by that fully insured premium. The insurance carrier is charging you a risk pool charge for that. So they're already building that into the premium that you're paying. They're just not seeing in line item that, right? So if we have this administrative cost and a reinsurance cost, the biggest cost that we have to account for in the world of self-funding is our claims. What are the claims going to be up to that 50,000? So when I use the example of, if 50,000 is our specific deductible and anything above that has been reinsured, meaning an insurance carrier is going to pay that, I, as the business owner, have to account for all of those first $49,999 for that particular person. So when I say a bunch of mid-level claims, maybe I did have a hit for these 10 different people, but maybe I did pay $45,000 for each of them, meaning I got no reimbursement from the insurance carrier for having a catastrophic hit. I've borne the full risk up to that deductible, right? And so that can lead to an aggregate breach, even if I didn't have an individual breach, if that makes sense.
What is an aggregate breach? What's a breach?
Yeah, so breaching that whale, they do breach, and it's a good commercial on one of our insurance carriers with that. So if you get to an individual limit, you're hitting your specific deductible. Mm-hmm. If you get to an aggregate limit, you're hitting your aggregate deductible, which is typically a corridor over and above what's expected in your overall claims. So if I tell you the claims are expected at 100%, we're going to spend $1 million of claims. If we spend 1.25 million, let's call it 25% corridor, now we have a reimbursement for every dollar over that's coming from the reinsurance carrier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very boring.
It's very boring. Yeah, you go back to talking about something more exciting.
Well, no, I think, look, the question, the underlying question, one, and you answered it by saying, find somebody that's smart that can help your business.
Yeah.
At what size does it make sense to even consider self-insurance?
That number is a moving target based on market, based on dynamics of your organization.
Give me some instance.
You could have somebody that is a 25-life company, but they are a very homogenous workforce. Young bucks, construction, let's say, bunch of 25-year-old guys, right? 25-year-old guys at a 25-life company, I might go immediately to level funding that plane, right? Where I know that I'm going to have a premium that's paid, and at the end of the year, in all likelihood, because these guys aren't using the plan, I'm going to have some surplus that's coming back to me, right? That's going to control that risk. Just the same, I might have a 75-life company of less homogenous, 75-life company.
Whatever, maybe 25 to 75.
Yeah.
25 to 60.
Unhealthy, right?
Yep.
Or lots of childbearing age females, or lots of old guys, right? So the risk changes, which I'm quickly going into that category of old guys. So, you have young women and older men that are some of the higher risk pools that are out there. And so, that may be a situation where you go, maybe I want to transfer that risk. Maybe I still want to be fully insured, even though I have this many people on the plan. It comes down to a function of math. We're really just doing the math to say, is there enough premium that we can collect to fund that claims bucket, right? Because at the end of the day, the most important fund is how much money am I able to set aside to cover the claims of my population?
You know what people don't know how to do that math? Almost all entrepreneurs, which is why I'm drilling into the basic mechanism.
Right. Which is why they need to come into a conversation with an honest consultant that's going to help them do that.
But somewhere in the ballpark of the starting point is 20 or 25 employees, maybe you consider opening the door to the conversation.
Level funding. The benchmark for a self-funded plan has typically been around 100 employees.
Great.
So when I start to look at what's the point that we're going to not have to worry about level funding and the added fixed cost, it's around 100 employees.
Got it. So 20 to 25, you start to look at level fund, you start opening the door. 100, you start to look at self-funding.
Yeah.
That's a great benchmark to look at.
Sure.
Because the other side of it is, hey, talk to a consultant. You know what I'm not going to do is spend time assessing 7 different consultants if I'm not in the ballpark anyway.
Sure.
Right? So understanding like, oh, don't worry about it until this point in time, I think is really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because like
it's the rate in the small group market, in the under 50 market, the rate is the rate. In the state of Florida, and again, when you're fully insured, you're governed by your state, not by federal. And so in the state of Florida, under 50, the rate is the same when you line up every single broker. So to your point, have the relationship with one, but it's not worth time for the others to go and shop the market for you because they're going to come back with the exact same plans, the exact same risks, which is why I stay out of that market, frankly. Yeah. I don't want to play in that commodity market, right? It's just transactional at that point. In the under 50, there is not the same amount of value for what my team could do as there is in the over 50 space.
Yeah, that's super important to know. Do you know the rules in any other states? You said it's 50 and under?
Yeah, 50 and under, Florida. And that's most of the states. I'd have to go back and fact check myself on. Most of it states 50 and under is smaller. Some of the states it gets up to 100.
Okay. Yeah, that's super, super important to know. So if you have less than 50 employees, your insurance premiums are what they are. Not fucking deal with it.
You deal with it and find somebody that's going to shoot you straight. But also, the minute you say, I don't like you anymore, I'm going to shop you, a person goes, all right, good luck. Maybe if you're shopping me just on the price of the insurance claim, you're going to find the exact same price on the exact same plan. If you're not happy with somebody, fired them and go to somebody else. They're going to give you the exact same price and the exact same plan. Yeah. What can they build around that? What's the suite of services that can come with that? And
how do you modify the plans?
Well, modifying the plans is as simple as looking at, when you're in the fully insured space, there's a lot less levers that you can pull. When you're in the fully insured space, I can look at the plans that are offered by the big carriers, by United, Blue Cross, Aetna, et cetera. And I can say the deductible is going to go up or down. That's going to change my PREAK, right? The max out of pocket is going to go up or down, the copays, et cetera. That is a lot less exciting to me. Just modifying those things, that not being able to control the levers behind the scenes, which we talked about before. What's the prescription drug pricing, right? What's the third party administrator doing? What's the reinsurance? Can I put this into a captive solution for funds? There's a lot of other alternatives that I think are more exciting than just changing the deductible chain of copays.
Yeah. Well, speaking of things that are less exciting or more exciting, selling insurance companies to bigger insurance companies, roll-ups and acquisitions in general is more exciting than insurance in general.
Sure.
When you first moved into this type of insurance, you worked into being a partner for All Trust. Mm-hmm. So you're a partner for All Trust, and ultimately that, as you mentioned earlier, in 2015, sold to Acrisure, which was a few $100 million at the time, now is several billion. What did that sale process look like? What was your role, and why? What were the elements that made All Trust attractive to be purchased?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that when you and I talked about having me on, and thank you for having me on. I think that your audience is very entrepreneurial. Your guests are very entrepreneurial. It's easy to look at somebody like me and go, this is a person who works for an employer of 20,000 employees. This is a corporate stooge, as you so eloquently called me. However, there was that journey to build to that process.
Well, by the way, like the number of people that I've had on the show that sold, and then it was sold with an earn-out, is super, super common.
Right.
I mean, it's incredibly common for people that are incredibly entrepreneurial to find themselves in a corporate role for some period of time.
Right.
So I like to talk shit about it.
Because
I have not had to do it.
you haven't done it yet, right? But it's also an understanding that there is a means to the end. And with All Trust, we were building something, and the founders of All Trust brought myself and a few others in as minority partners, and we said, we're going to sell to you guys. Well, this was fantastic. And the growth then, we set our shareholder hat down and put the sales guy hat on and just grinded for years, where we're grinding, we're building something, we're actively buying the company. Well, the company grew to a point where the valuation was now meaningful, and more meaningful than our bank accounts were going to justify. And so the founders, who were like second parents to us, I mean, they were truly our mentors. Joe and Karen were amazing people. And they were doing a seller finance buyout, essentially. And they said, look, at the end of the day, we don't want you to have to go to a bank and get a big loan. The company's worth a lot more than we initially thought it was going to be when we started this process years ago. And so on a bar neck, and here's a number that you're going to get. Congratulations. We have now been sold. We are selling to Acrisure. And at the time, Acrisure was a name that none of us had heard of, because Acrisure's goal was to buy entrepreneurs that could continue that entrepreneurial spirit in their own market. And so at the time, Acrisure was buying us and allowed us to maintain our culture of All Trust and the name All Trust. And that stayed there for quite some time, just until a couple of years ago. Something changes when you stamp your name on an NFL stadium. And so when Pittsburgh Steelers, Heinz Field became Acrisure Stadium, a lot of us went, hey, we should probably grab onto those coattails, because the name All Trust served us very well in the Florida market. Acrisure now became national, and today 20-something other countries as an international organization, $35 billion valuation. I mean, it's one of the top 5 insurance agencies out there. But in fact, Greg has pivoted to make this a fintech company. So now as a corporate employee, I'm learning the avenues of not just employee benefits, which is what I grew up doing, but all of the other aspects of Acrisure that are making consulting with clients better. Yeah. Right. And so my referral partners today aren't just the local CPA. It's my colleagues who do the property casualty, do the surety bonds, that do mortgage, that do title, right? That do payroll. So now we own a payroll company, which is, wild to think. You watched us roll up in this acquisition, but it was a fun process to be part of it, not without plenty of challenge going into it, right? And continuing that organic growth, because you don't want to buy somebody who's then just going to become fat and happy. So they bought somebody, you stick that earn on in front of that. Yeah, you will want you to continue growing. And so for the next couple of years, we continue growing. And then you look at it and you go, wait a minute, I now have an opportunity with a lot of low-hanging fruit, right, with partners of mine that sell something that is similar to what I sell, and a client that has a very similar need. That low-hanging fruit is getting harvested now. So for the last 8 years of this partnership, it's been a profitable thing. We continue to grow.
So what I found out about Acrisure is that their general model is something in the ballpark of when they acquire 40 to 60% cash and 40 to 60% rolled in equity. So when they buy an agency, they give you, call it 50% cash, and the rest of it is an earnout or equity. What did that look like in your situation? And I also, I would love a breakdown of how the owners of the agency pulled you in, because you mentioned sort of funding process, but you ran through it real quick.
Yeah, it wasn't a gimme. It was, do you want to buy this? And, we said, sure.
What does that mean? Buy into the agency?
Yeah.
So, got it. So they said, hey, the value of the agency currently is X.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you, if you want 1%, it's going to cost you 1% of shares to buy in.
That's exactly right.
But then over the course of time, it became 5X.
That's right.
And then they came to you and they were like, yeah, but we told you 1X.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's 5X or your percentage.
That's right. Yeah. Got it. And so it was a big deal to say, we're not going to be stroking a check, effectively just, payroll deductions that were happening every single month to actively buy the firm. And it was a big chunk of my own personal revenue for those 5 or 6 years that we were doing that before we sold. So yeah, they gave the opportunity to buy what felt like a significant percentage of the firm, which was great. And then when the sale happened, the roll-up happened with Acrisure, it was just a matter of rolling all of those shares then into becoming an Acrisure share.
And what were the responsibilities? So typical earnouts involve the founder
Yeah.
and not the team.
Yeah.
But because you are now a partner in the firm,
Did you have a responsibility in the earnout as well?
Big time. Yeah, they needed that to happen. I mean, Karen and Joe were at a stage where they were looking to be able to take some ships off the table and go to the next chapter in their lives. And the rest of us that were buying it were not. We were, actively working. This again was now 10 years ago, and so my runway for work is so many years in the future. So it was a big deal to make sure that we were still engaged in that earnout process and incentivized by that earnout process. And so it was, don't take your foot off the pedal was kind of the message. Make sure that you're still renewing those clients. And that's how we talk about that sales cycle and that renewal. Making that a non-factor has been critical to my business to make sure that a client knows I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not coming here to ask if you will renew with me. That's a given because of the cycle of the relationship. Just the same, continuing to generate new business, continuing to hunt, continue to not sit back and be happy. And in this business, because of the nature of so many brokers that are paid on commission and having a natural increase every single year because renewals go up, doesn't seem like a fair way to just continue to increase your own personal wealth.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's happened. And so those brokers that have chosen to sit back, be fat and happy, and just allow that natural increase to happen without adding new clients, meaning without having to stay sharp in the world of education in our industry, enables those of us who are still hunters to come and pluck those clients who have become less satisfied away from them.
Yeah, I love that. So economically, quick math here, Acrisure bought your agency when they were worth $400 or $500 million.
Yeah.
Now they're worth, did you say 30 billion?
So the valuation is I think we're probably a $5 billion organization today.
Yeah, that was the number. Top line. Those are the numbers I saw. So huge increase.
Huge increase.
So the shares that got rolled over are
Doing okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I will say also that in that kind of roll up, most of the roll ups that I see in small business are like PE roll-ups that are smaller plays.
Yeah.
So you roll in and you get sort of a quote-unquote second bite at the apple.
Yeah, that's right.
Meaning you sold your company, took some money off the table, and you have some nominal equity that gets rolled into the bigger thing.
Right.
But the bigger thing is only going to grow so big.
That's right.
And you're going to get a few points, and you're going to get a little bit more, but it's not a ton more.
That's right.
In this case, with the growth trajectory of this multi-billion-dollar firm, the second bite is potentially much bigger than the first.
It was, and we had PE backing in that year, 2015, when we sold. There was still PE backing. That one of the biggest pieces in the Acrisure history is that 2016 we did a management buyout of that PE, and so today, I don't know the exact number, but probably 75 or 80% of Acrisure is owned by active employee shareholders. Acrisure is still, as a now privately held company. And so that was a really big deal, that the year after we sold, we also said the PE, here's your money back. Congratulations, good investment. We'll take it from here. And so our CEO controls our board. And that's a big deal to us, that we are not beholden to outside shareholder. We were not beholden to an outside board. And that is a selling point when I sit down with larger organizations to say, look, your current broker is publicly traded or beholden to a board that's not, that doesn't necessarily have your best interest at heart. They have the shareholder interest at heart. There's a disalignment there.
Yeah. That's a great selling call.
It is, right?
It is, totally.
Yeah.
I think that the takeaway for almost everybody is to think about what the other elements are, the other features or benefits that you're not thinking about that aren't part of the core product set, that do impact your target marketing clients, and how can you weave those into your sales pitch, right? So that one may be straightforward to you, and maybe you were clear on that. I didn't think about that until I said it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so like in my world, we talk about that too, where people, absolutely, where people are, when you register, and you might have a parallel, but when you register as a payment provider with Visa and MasterCard directly, you are beholden, you have a fiduciary responsibility to a given bank.
Sure.
And what that means is that the terms and conditions and products that the banks sell are what you sell.
Right.
And when you don't register with Visa and MasterCard, you can send business where you want.
Gotcha.
Right.
Sure.
So I don't have to bring you to a given bank. So I don't have to jam my product down your throat.
Right.
Right. I have the options to go where we want.
Yeah.
And to highlight, and by the way, the downsides of that is I have less control.
Sure.
We make less money per deal. right? But I have flexibility on where I can send things.
Right.
And so I can sell against people by highlighting what they think is their strong point. It's just like, oh, we're registered with Visa and MasterCard. And I'm like, sweet. So the public company person would probably sell, hey, we're a public company. We're a great insurance agency that's public.
Right. Who also is selling our own products, right? They're public and beholden to your own shareholders more so than your clients. And look, there could be a day down the road that too changes for Acrisure. I mean, it's become a very large organization. So, like you talk about for the average entrepreneur, what is that next step? What's the exit strategy? And so, a lot less control today than I would have had 10 years ago. But certainly it's a great message for clients to hear that we own our company right now. So we're making decisions for the betterment of our clients, not shareholders.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that look at somebody else's strength and think about how you can make it look like a weakness.
Absolutely.
Is a good exercise.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So normally I interrupt the show to promote EPD, to tell you about credit card processing. But today I'm going to tell you about our partner program. If you know other business owners that accept credit cards and you refer them to Easy Pay Direct, you will get paid a percentage of what we make for the life of the account. As long as they're processing, you can build a residual for doing nothing, just the introduction. You can do that by going to epd.com/BAM partners. That's epd.com/BAM partners.
Okay, so I have a fundamental belief that relationships drive everything else in business.
Me too.
Also, it can be pretty easy to rationalize social time in the name of business.
Sure. Yeah. We've done that every now and then, as I would call it.
I don't know. How do you rationalize drinking 12 martinis in a night?
I did not even look at I did not. Yeah, that's a little much.
I call bullshit.
Okay, right. Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Tell me about martinis from Moffitt.
So that's a great segue. I don't know that I've ever had 12 martinis.
You definitely did on the first one.
I think you had a bunch of young guys starting out in business that the group was called Bay Area Advisors. At the time, it was just a bunch of guys getting together at Beef O'Brady's, that all of whom were big timing each other to say that we're worth more than we are. All of us in our 20s trying to build businesses in industry exclusive positions, meaning, one guy's an attorney, one guy's a property insurance guy, I'm a benefits guy. We didn't want to have overlap. The rules were we also didn't want to have women because we were all single. We thought that we'd spend too much time with social flirtation. So that went out. Anybody with babies and families and marriage was probably the devil and should be out the door. So all of these things, fast forward 20 years now, and it's the reverse in all of the cases, that the few that have come in of late that are younger, maybe still in their 30s or younger, unmarried, you kind of look at side-eyed a little bit and go, is this person going to be trustworthy if they don't have kids, they don't have a family yet? So that the idea back then was, how could we be the not chamber, right? The business card flip that you and I have been to plenty of times over our career that is mostly meaningless. I mean, if you end up walking away with 100 car and you called one person, then you got something out of that event. Yeah. We wanted to develop deeper relationships, and so I have a much, much smaller organization. So started out at 6. By statute, agreed to not grow by more than 20. And so today, I think we rewrote the bylaws and we're probably 21 or 22 today. But it was a really big deal that we not just know one another, but as time went on, to know who we're dating, who the families became. Now these guys are my best friends. I know the kids' names. We spend lots of time together. But after that first year of getting together once a month for dinner, one time a month at the end of the month, getting a good steak dinner that none of us could afford at the time, but again, try to big time each other. After 6 months of that, we said we should probably do something a little bit more meaningful than just get together for beers and steaks once a month. One of the guys had a friend's a doc at Moffitt and needed some funding for what he was doing. And we said, what we're good at is throwing parties. And so a bunch of 20-something-year-old guys were pretty good at drinking and throwing parties. And that first party was at the Tampa Club. They agreed to give us the room for free. I think I was a member at the time somehow, again, trying to big time people. And so they gave us the room for free. Jack Harris, who's a local DJ, agreed to come on for the cost of a few Miller Lights. One of our guys grew up in the Ybor area, and so they would find some food that fell off some trucks somewhere. And so food was all donated, as it would be. Anyhow, we had 80 people And we wrote Moffitt a check for $3,000 that next week. We thought we were a really big deal. You know, he was charged $20 at the door or whatever it was, 80 people in that event. And I got a call from Moffitt that next Monday. And they said, you used our logo without our permission. And I thought, oh, crap. We did. Had it up on a sign. I didn't know that was a thing. But worse, at the Tampa Club that night was H. Lee Moffitt himself, the namesake, right? And Mr. Moffitt is significantly older than our clients, than our fellow members were at that time. So when Mr. Moffitt approached the table, seeing the sign that said Martinis for Moffitt, he said to the young lady working the door, I think this is my party. And she politely said, I doubt it. So the relationship didn't start out great. The next year, we linked up with the owner of the Columbia restaurant, who is a major donor to Moffitt. And if you guys will consider this particular division, which was pediatric sarcoma, I'd love to underwrite the event at my restaurant. And so the second year was at the Columbia restaurant, which was fantastic. And Richard has been a mentor for us for years. Linked up soon thereafter with Ed Drosty, the founder of Hooters. And so Hooters got engaged, and we started to ramp the event up. And so Moffitt became a great partner. By that second year, we figured out the logo situation. But Martinis for Moffitt was born. And we're coming up on our 20th year this year. We will have now donated over $4 million to Moffitt. Money has gone to different divisions. Probably the most consistent over time has been genitourinology of the advanced prostate cancer collaboration through Dr. Pausang. And Julio has saved many people in my life, including my own mom, my own dad. He obviously genitourinology didn't deal with my mother's breast cancer, but I made one call to this position we've become close with over time to say, if it was your mom, who's the one breast cancer doc at Moffitt that you would refer her to? And it was amazing, life-saving, and she's doing great today, cancer-free. My wife's stepmom, I mean, the list goes on. My own boss, Joe, went to see Dr. Pausang. So, you know, it's been an incredibly impactful. When you talk about relationships driving everything, we started a party. We started drinking martinis in the spirit of finding a prevention, finding a cure for cancer. And the relationship with Pausang and with that hospital has given access to our clients that they wouldn't have otherwise had. Clients, friends. I mean, this is unrelated to the business that I have, but in some level, there's been crossover, right? With bosses and clients that can now get front door treatment through Moffitt that they wouldn't have had without the waiting for that.
So that's actually part of what I wanted to hear about. So I love hearing the story of that. I was present for a lot of that.
A lot of it.
A lot of that. I don't think I was at the first one. I was definitely at the second.
You're at the second of the Columbia.
Right.
And there is a lot of drinking. I didn't mean to correct you. There is a significant amount of drinking. I just don't know that it's a normal Friday night for us. It's definitely a vacation weekend.
So you started the group from I'll say networking and hair quotes, right? From a profitability perspective.
Sure.
How do I grow my business? Right. It launched into Martinis for Moffitt, and which has now donated millions of dollars to a great cause. You just highlighted some of the secondary benefits, which are access to the hospital for people you care about. Going down the path of a charitable endeavor, how do you look at that from a use of time perspective as a young business person?
Yeah, I think that was probably some of the best advice that Joe gave me starting out, is he said, I want you to get engaged. There was Emerge Tampa had started at the time, which was an offshoot of the Chamber of Commerce. And he said, I want you to get on the board there and start spending time. And that was a nonprofit. All of us know the Chamber of Commerce and the value that can bring. That period of time led to the creation of Bay Area Advisors. And it was figuring out what we liked and didn't like about the chamber organization. And we wanted to have something that was deeper and more meaningful. And so quickly it became, look, profit is one thing. We're all trying to refer business to one another, drive one another's business, but let's have another meaningful escapade that we're going to go after here. And so we launched a 501c3, and it became a legitimate nonprofit that is, it does change lives. I mean, it has been an incredible offshoot of my business. And so when you ask about how much time do you spend there, religiously. I mean, I was in this group before I was with my now wife. right? So I've been in this group almost since the beginning of my work career. Religiously, we hold that last Wednesday of the month as our dinner. And it's a big deal. That dinner is not just a get together and drink beers and screw around with each other. It is a formal dinner night with an agenda where we talk about Martinis from Moffitt is the top of the agenda every single time. And then the other periphery things. But again, this group of 20 guys has become my closest friends. And so we talk about family weekend. What are we doing to engage all of the kids together? The last weekend of school, we always get together. What are we doing for our holiday party? What are we doing for our guys getaway? Well, we just go and sort of let our hair. I said let our hair. I don't really have a lot left anymore, but we just get together and it's a nice way to decompress with people who you trust, but are also some of the guys in this group are some of the most successful entrepreneurs that I know. And it's an incredibly impactful mastermind class that we've created among our closest friends.
So as a mastermind group or networking group, however you want to look at it, right? You've got EO, you've got YPO, you've got all these other, you've got Chamber of Commerce stuff. Those for sure are there to build business. Sure. Right? That's the core, build business, build relationship, core function of the group, learn, grow. Charity events.
Yeah.
Like Moffitt. How do you translate things like that into deal flow without it being super cringy?
Oof. So we're not there to sell. We're there for a party with a purpose, right? And so that particular event, I can't imagine any level of selling that is happening there with the exception of relationship building, right? What we're doing at that event is I will bring prospects and clients to the event with the asterisk that they understand this is a party. This is a social gathering. There is going to be plenty of drinking that's going to go on at the event. So if that's not the right person to come to it, we're not going to let that person, right? But all of the people that come, now there's a chance, and you and I have exchanged people at this particular event where you go, hey, this might be a person that might impact your business or your personal life, right? And so there's a lot of personal relationships that come out of that. So I think deal flow happens not because of the mission of cancer, but because of the relationship that's driven the people that we break it at.
Yes, I think what I heard there was keep it social.
Yeah.
In those environments, period, build the relationship, make the ask layer.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Nobody's pulling out documentation with that.
Well, no, but I think that one of the lessons that I've gotten over time, and I think this is true of, I can't think of an exception to the statement, but I think it's true of all relationships, is if you have an ask, be direct in the ask.
Sure.
And don't, seed it in a creepy way, because people see that and feel it.
Yeah.
And so just, hey, I've got something I want to talk to you about later. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it now, but is a reasonable way to go back and then make a direct ask.
Yeah.
That's at least been something that I've seen to be effective.
I agree. Yeah. And I find that this is a great environment to build and foster those referral relationships, maybe even more so than a direct client relationship, right? Where I might be bringing people to get a vision of who are some of the people I surround myself with. And that's part of the value of that event to me, is that they can see that this is bigger than just Moffitt Hospital. This is bigger than just Bay Area Advisors. There are some very impressive connections that happen at that event.
I love that. So you're old, but you started
front to change soon. Isn't that crazy?
Which is that?
I said a front number change soon. There's a number we have to refer, which is not just a few months away.
A front number change. Yeah. So you're old. You started Moffitt when you were young. Yeah. Would you encourage young people to get involved in nonprofits?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was a game changer in my, not just career, but in my life, right? I think that and it was Joe's advice to say, get engaged here. And then the advice was found a board. But when I was 26 years old, I didn't know what the hell that meant. Create a board. What are you talking about, right? Yeah. So by getting into the Chambers program for under 40-year-olds, that helped open my eyes to maybe the idea of founding a board is possible, right? And so when the right person, when Jason Levy approached me and said, hey, we want to start this thing, Jason and I sat down and said, this right now is exactly what we need at this time in our lives, right? And we didn't have the vision then for what it has become today. The vision that was in front of us right then was, how can we help the Lilburn business? Right. And along the way, we're going to become big friends doing this. And then, oh my gosh, now we have this opportunity with this nonprofit. and latching onto that, I would definitely encourage young people today that are starting out to find that nonprofit cause. It gives you purpose and drive and excitement, right? And if cancer is it, great. If, saving the planet in a different way is it, however that may be, find that thing that's going to give you that additional drive and purpose that you have to look forward to, right? And that you can build relationships around, and you can build your business around, right? You can build client relationships on that just as much as friendships.
My purpose is to get the world to live in an honest way of life, so that we don't reject AI entirely and just
Didn't know that about you.
go back to humanity.
That's great. Okay, cool. Yeah. And read the cover of the phone. That's us.
Absolute opposite of that, actually. No, it is kind of a beautiful notion.
It's a beautiful notion. It's hard. Put your pragmatic hat on. I think that's probably hard for most of us who have already gone down a psychological life. Right?
It's not.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a 25-year-old entrepreneur starting out?
Grind. Grind like your tomorrow depends on it. Right? I think what you and I did in business, and you more than anybody that I know, is don't let any obstacles and distractions get in the way of the vision that you have of success. Right? And so there are so many opportunities for distractions at 25 years old. Right? I mean, we think about what I don't think I still knew what I wanted to be when I was 25 years old. I was still figuring out dating life, and you're still figuring out every aspect of life in general. But I think if you remember that getting up each day and grinding, that's your purpose, I think that will lead to success. It's putting one foot in front of the other. My boss at the time, when I was 25, I just started with Aflac. And he said, if you'll meet me every morning, 7 o'clock on 4th Street in St. Pete, we're gonna beat the streets, up and down the street. We're gonna walk in the doors, introduce ourselves. If you do that every single day, 5 days a week, it'll be for 1 month, I will help launch your career. And I thought, you know what? Every single day for 1 month, we did that, and it absolutely launched my career. Same time, every day, 7 o'clock, beating it. And that level of grind, I think if a young person stills themselves with so many distractions out there, with what's going on in the news, what's going on with AI, how can I grab this to help impact my business? Just put your head down and work, right? Do what you need to do to put food on the table, and eventually that culmination is going to lead to a successful career.
What's a belief that you had throughout your journey that is different now or has changed?
I'll tell you a belief that is important to remind myself of. You quoted Charlie Munger earlier.
I'm not quoting as accurate. Made a reference. I had to paraphrase that guy.
I believe, this is a quote from Emerson, who said, every man I meet is my superior in some way. And I think if you think about the journey that we have in sales, we want to, I talk about big timing one another when we were young in our business and trying to show that we were successful then. And all of this knew it was BS because we were still building our careers. Well, eventually you start to get good at something and you string together a few home runs that you start to buy into your own hype reel. And I think Emerson saying something so humbly is important for me to instill in my own kids, so that they understand that, hey, you're good, but there's always somebody better at something, right? And so I think that has been important to, throughout the career, to come back and go, all right, I had a good year, but this person did it better. This person's smart. This person's got a better podcast, better haircut, whatever the case may be. I think really figuring that out and reminding ourselves of that is a good goal.
I love that. I mean, what I've heard and what I got out of that was, when I want to be dismissive about somebody and critique them for not understanding, not knowing, not processing, it's important to remember that they're better than me at something.
Something, absolutely. Yeah. And that's an important message for my kids to hear and to understand, right? And so I hope to take that away from this segment.
Let's beat up voice and the rest. We'll delete the rest of it. Corey Lilburn, it's been it's always awesome hanging out.
It's always awesome.
We're gonna have lots of fun times in the upcoming week. For my transition.
Transition. I mean, glad we're 45. Okay, all right. Always supportive of you, my friend.
Where can people find out more about you?
Through LinkedIn. So they click the LinkedIn link here, hopefully at some point in time.
Yep.
And other than that, I sort of fly under the radar.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for grabbing out the time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Beyond a Million. If you liked the podcast, you should probably click the bell and subscribe, and maybe leave a comment below. That helps other people find us and keeps this flywheel going. And the more people that find us, the better guests that we can get on the show. So if you could take 30 seconds to do those things, it would be amazing.